You guys are looking festive.
There's 5 minutes for you to go grab a hat, Natalie.
Like I own a hat. We are not costume people.
I even decorated my chair.
That's great.
Here we go. Sheena's removing things from consent. 7.3.
We're live on YouTube.
Okay. I was saying, like, I was surprised everything did stay on consent.
What's 7.3?
Transit. Should probably, I mean, it's legitimate to pull it off if you're not going to support it, but yeah.
I'm gonna have a couple motions like that in the new year.
What do you mean?
Just stuff that I'll pull off just to vote against. No.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. In the new year, you already know what's coming on the agenda in the new year.
I know one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Natalie, when this is on, it says live on YouTube, but it's really just a picture of that's on the screen, right? It's not us.
I think they can hear us.
I think they can hear the audio. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It's a good question.
Yeah, because it's just a comms screen that's showing.
Yeah.
We can hear you and you are live.
There you go.
Thank you, Tamara.
You're very welcome and you're looking very festive.
And yes, you said, can you hear any noise from Chambers on your, are you in Chambers, Tamara?
Yes, I am.
Okay. It's a bit echoey.
Is that better?
Say something again.
What about now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Sing a Christmas carol. I want.
Nobody needs to be subjected to that.
Oh, come on.
Come on. Oh, Ray, I liked your beard before. Like, where's your beard, man?
Go get a hat, Ray. Or a sweater. He's gone.
I lost my hat.
I heard
Ken and I shaved the beard off 3 weeks ago, Ken.
Yeah.
I heard the beard that you had in the video was made out of makeup remover pads.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
leftover from my ex-wife. They've been here for 4.5 years.
I loved how you had to hold it on while you were reading your thing.
I was gonna say, no wonder they didn't stick.
They weren't sticky. Those things aren't sticky, dude. I taped them
Oh.
together.
You did great.
I had to think of something.
It was perfect.
That was perfect. You had the chair all decorated.
Yeah, and my chair.
I can't remember if I told Jackie or Ken, but Sheena had submitted an earlier version of hers, but the quality wasn't good. So I think she refilmed it. But the first version she was sitting with her piece of the poem and she was reading it to her dog. It was really quite cute. It was cute. Yeah.
I filmed mine. I think that like the last evening it was due in the dark.
Yours was more like a Halloween video there.
It was pretty dark.
That's really Christmas.
It was pretty dark.
I don't think all this electrical current running around will be healthy for me here.
What is that?
What's what?
That noise.
That's Dax barking at the door.
Okay.
I tried to find him one of those Grinch antlers for, like, you know, the one
Yep.
little one. Couldn't find it, and I wasn't gonna make it for him. He wouldn't tolerate it anyways.
Yeah, I had a fascinator on Boomer yesterday and he doesn't like that. He looks adorable, but
He had a hat on for the video.
there you go. Ray's decorating his background up for us.
Do you want us all to be wearing hats, Kathy?
If you have one, go grab it. Oh, your tie looks awesome.
Thank you. Let me see if I can find it. Marilyn?
We'll start the meeting when Wes Broadkid gets back with his hat. Is Sheena with us? Do not see her. Okay. I'll give her 2 secs. Very quiet. Okay, we're gonna start. 'Cause I have 2 o'clock. There's Sheena. And there's Wes. Perfect. Okay. All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order for Monday, December 21st. Attendance at the start of the meeting is 100%. Can I have a motion from a member council? Thank you, Ken, to adopt the agenda as presented.
That the December 21st, 2020 agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you so much. All those in favor? I guess we'll use our voting thing in the participants button.
Tried to do it. Here we go.
3, 4. I think that's everyone. That's passed. Okay. Now we do have some people that have pre-registered. Let me just bring up the list for presentations today. Registered speakers. I think we have quite a few. We do have quite a few. Most on the face coverings bylaw and 1 or 2 on the Energy Corp. I'll go through in order that they registered. I'll just remind everyone who has registered to speak that we have a very long, and I'm saying a very long agenda. So I'm going to ask people to present, if you've presented before, new information only, and try to keep it as concise as possible. And we'll hopefully get through this because this could be the first full hour of our meeting if we go for the full 5 minutes of every member that's registered. So the first, yes, somebody wants to talk about the St. Albert Disc Golf proposal for a permanent course. We have, how do you say the last name, Legault? Nick, are you with us? No Nick that I can see. I will come back and see if he arrives after the fact. So next I have Barb Bowman who wants to speak about the face covering bylaw. Barb with us?
Hi, Mayor Heron. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi there. Hi. Yeah, I actually prepared just a little paper so I can.
And for all those that are speaking on the face coverings bylaw update, just so you know, the recommendation in front of council today is to actually suspend the bylaw.
Yes.
That's what we're debating today. So we're not really debating the merits of masks or anything, but I think if that might just help some of you who are speaking to this understand what we're discussing. So sorry to interrupt, Barb. I'll give you your 5 minutes.
No, that's okay. It actually probably changes a little bit about what I was going to say, but I think it's just easier for me to go through what I already prepared and then you can take it from there if you don't mind. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so today I'm speaking specifically about the exemption portion of the mask and of the provincial and St. Albert bylaws. I do understand by what you just said that you're talking about suspending it. I also became aware that it would be reinstated after a provincial bylaw expires, from my understanding. But I'm not going to go there yet. Let me quickly go through what I was going to say. So in both bylaws, there's medical exemptions in place, and I'm one of the minorities with an exemption. So back in August, I actually had a conversation with you, Mayor Heron, on the phone, and I had voiced my concern about the exemptions because the public and businesses in St. Albert were refusing to recognize and outright attacking people for not wearing a mask. So, I mean, we understand everyone's scared, but at the same time, there's exemptions in place for a reason. So this council, unfortunately, in doing this doing these bylaws without educating businesses and the public of exemptions, has created an environment that's extremely violent. And there's a lot of hate towards what I call a new minority. This has ultimately created a new minority that's being discriminated against. So I think it's really important here that we need the public and businesses to understand that there are disabilities, whether you can see them or not, on someone that exist. And having a masking mandate, it's torturous. It's not kind of something that we don't like. This is a serious concern for us, and it's not fair for us to be completely discriminated against the way we are. So anyways, so we're getting denied service in some businesses. We're getting harassed. I've been harassed many times. I mean, thankfully I have a fairly thick skin, but a lot of people don't, right? So, and if we're gonna have these policies and bylaws in place and then also enforced by fines, then it would be good for those businesses or other public people, members of the public who are breaching that portion of the bylaw to also be fined the same as somebody that isn't participating or doing their part. Then the businesses should also be fined the same. So yes, and then also when I spoke to you in the summer, you were telling me that the masking bylaws were only temporary, and now with this new policy that you're looking at, so you're letting yours expire. From my understanding, once the provincial policy expires, then you would reinstate it with no end date, which does not sound temporary to me. That sounds permanent. So my question now to all of the council is, how are you going to support exemptions in St. Albert specifically? When are we going to educate the public and businesses that they will also be subject to fines should they break the bylaw rules themselves? And how can we, I mean, at this point, what are you going to do to educate or not allow businesses to go above and beyond a mandate on their own, which they're creating discriminatory practices against the public? Like, we need your help to tell them not to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barb. I know this is not easy, and I have heard your story a few times, and it's a difficult, almost impossible thing to answer. Is there anyone on council have any questions for Barb? Go ahead, Councillor Watkins.
I got a question. You said that you were outright attacked. Maybe you could go into that.
Yeah. Yes, I've had people physically grab me by the arm to say, why aren't you wearing your mask? Right? Or are you just stupid? Or just, I mean, really full on physically touching my body, right? Coming way too close to me. So those are attacks. It's not okay, right?
Are you aware that our bylaw contained a section that was that allowed for the enforcement of people who were harassed, and that you could call bylaw and make a complaint, and somebody else?
Yes, Mayor Herron had informed me of that when I had my conversation with her in summer. Fortunately, I haven't been physically attacked, but you know, many of these incidences also happen so quickly, and by the time you were to call anybody, those people are already gone. They just say what they want to say, do what they want to do, and then they leave, right?
Whether it's on or not, if you're in a business and somebody harasses you, you can call bylaw and lay a complaint, and they'll have to go and investigate. So
Okay.
there is something in the bylaw that allows for that. So if you said you were denied service at multiple businesses and that you were harassed numerous times, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
what we had that in the bylaw section that allowed for that to be enforced. So I would encourage you that next time anybody does any harassment or anything towards you, that you call bylaw enforcement, because it works both ways. It works for people who are getting harassed, and it works for people who aren't wearing masks.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Barb, when we get to the face covering part of the agenda, I think it would be worth having a question to our legal staff about, you know, how businesses and what authority we have over business, because a business is essentially, and I always use Walmart as an example, can bring in their own rules, and they can be stricter, and we can't stop that. But I can talk to our legal team about that. But yeah, they have that right to do their own rules, essentially.
So I have one question about that though, is because then, I mean, they're really now creating their own form of law or whatever policy. It's discriminatory though. So, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that any company would go ahead and create something that specifically discriminates against people with medical conditions. I mean, I find that outrageous, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna go, I saw Nick Legault sign in. Nick, are you there?
I am. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry, we called your name a second ago, but you weren't quite on yet, so we
Oh.
went ahead, but now we'll come back to you. You have a proposal for disc golf.
I do.
Yeah. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
Okay.
I hope that that works out for everyone. Let me know when that pops up for everyone.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So knowing to be brief, I did have a video I was going to share, but I'll skip that knowing that we'll keep things short. So just to cover off what disc golf is for everyone. So similar to ball golf, disc golf is played with frisbees where you're throwing a disc into a target. The target looks like what I have on the right-hand side of the screen here, which is a basket. And then here's an example of a number of discs that are available to play the sport. So some of you may have played. There's some courses available in Edmonton. But I guess what we're trying to see is if there's potential to get one set up in St. Albert. So some of the benefits of disc golf, so the reasons that I think disc golf is a great idea is that it's a low cost of entry. It's free to play most courses. Really all you need is a disc or maybe 3. Starter sets start around $35 and single disc somewhere between $12 and $20 depending. It's easy to learn, but it's difficult to master just like regular golf. It seems like an easy, just put the ball in the hole. So it's just like put the disc in the basket, but definitely there's some challenges in terms of overcoming obstacles and gauging wind and the skill required to play disc golf. The nice thing is that it's an all-year wellness and recreation for all ages and fitness levels. So it's not limited to elite athletes of any kind, and it's not limited to people who are really good at Frisbee. It's something that most people can pick up anywhere from children all the way to seniors. So I think it's something that has a wide approach for a big chunk of the population. It's a low impact activity that gets people out walking. So that was great. So, during COVID times, it was great to be able to get out, go for a walk in the park and bring a Frisbee along and play around a disc golf while you're in the park. It definitely works on muscle strength and flexibility and coordination. And definitely there's a lot of mental health benefits in terms of being able just to get out and kind of divert your attention to something that you have to focus on. So what's happening for disc golf in St. Albert? So what I've got here is a picture of Langholm Park and where we've set up a temporary disc golf course in June. It wasn't using baskets like you saw in the earlier slide. We were using suspended buckets to be able to suspend them from trees. That way it avoided any type of, issues with landscaping, so that landscaping crews could still go through and cut the grass. And then we just marked tee boxes with some paint to be able for players to see where the tee boxes were. I thought that this was going to be like a few rounds played by a few players, but as of October 1st, we saw 500 rounds played and recorded in UDisc, which is an app that tracks rounds and also shows you where the course is laid out. So that was a big surprise in terms of like the engagement we saw from the community and from players. So we average about 125 rounds a month, which works out to about 3 or 4 rounds per day. And you've probably seen that picture where I live, so I didn't realize I left that in there. But I can generally see, what's happening in the park, and being in this close proximity, I definitely made use of the park space this summer, and I did in the prior summer as well when we moved. We did see our Facebook group grow quite quickly, so we went from 32 to 81 members. I think yesterday I checked, we were up to over 90 members already. So we definitely saw a lot of good engagement, and we actually saw some positive response in terms of the course. So surprisingly, our course was rated just under 4 out of 5 based on 39 ratings and 16 written reviews. So I did share some of the reports we shared with the Parks and Rec department, and I'm hoping they'll get passed on to you after this. But we kind of break it down in terms of, the usage that we saw in the reviews, and so you can actually read them and see what the feedback was.
I'll let you know you have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. And then you just noted that we actually saw that we actually have a pretty high rating compared to other courses that don't have actual targets. So overall, we saw kind of really good response from a temporary course that was just kind of put together by the community. So definitely many players reached out. They wanted to understand like how they can help, how can we make this permanent? We saw steady use. We even saw a class come out in September and use the course for a gym class. So that was nice to see. And I think it just bodes that there's lots of interest out there for disc golf, and there's lots of people that feel they can use the course. And now with winter coming on, we actually added lights to the buckets so that people can play in evening hours as the light sets low. And I've seen some people play since the snow's been out. I was actually out myself yesterday. So there's a need for a permanent course. It's a fast growing sport. There's an opportunity for local residents and schools, like I mentioned, to be part of that. And then we've seen positive feedback. There's definitely always internet trolls out there. And I was surprised not to see that not anyone trolled any comments we made about disc golf, both the community pages and our own page. So I guess the ask is,
time is up. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Is there,
Yeah. So just the last comment is just more, our ask is that we just move forward and get resources to move forward with a park assessment for Langholm Park and a public engagement, which are the last two steps to move to a permanent.
Awesome. Okay. Now we have an opportunity to talk a bit more because there might be some questions. My first question for you would be, have you spoken to the neighbors around Langholm Park?
I have. So
your neighbors, yeah.
Yeah, so I talked to my neighbors and they enjoyed it. I actually passed off some discs to my neighbors who have some kids to go try it out. And then people we crossed in the park, and even there was a lot of interest in, people walking their dogs and walking through the park and asking, hey, what is this? And how do I, hey, where can I get discs and those kinds of things? So a lot of positive interest. I didn't get any negative feedback. I don't know if the city did. And if they did, I'd be happy to address it.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions? Oops. Hold on. Okay, Council, go ahead, Councillor Hanson.
Thanks, Nick. I'm so glad that you came and provided this presentation. And I'm so happy to see that the numbers have increased. I knew that this would be something that people would gravitate to. I know that you have talked about you've looked at other parks. We were talking about the new Kingswood Park. Can you tell us why you've landed on Langholm, and if you see any barriers there with the children's park?
No, thank you. So we did look at other parks. We did look at Kingswood. We looked at Liberton, looked at a few other parks that could work, but there's definitely more conflict in terms of other activities that are going on in those parks today. Langholm is an underused park, so there's not a lot going on between the ball diamond and the soccer field. So that space is really just trees and small hills, which is great for disc golf because it allows for barriers and an interesting course in terms of changing in topography and things to go around. Yeah, definitely we were cognizant of the playground, the soccer field, and the ball diamond. So we were cognizant to play around that and to design the course around those things to make sure that there aren't any stray discs that are wandering into those areas. But definitely willing to work with the Parks Department during a park assessment to really ensure that the way the course is set up is safe for everyone to use.
Okay, great. And so a follow-up to that would be, do you have, if we were to put actual pads in place where you would tee off of, and proper baskets, not temporary baskets, and would you do, I guess, what would be the cost for 9 holes or 18 holes? Do you have those numbers?
Yeah.
And would you be doing any fundraising towards that, or is the expectation that the city would pick up on all of that?
No, absolutely, and great question. I'm just going to pull up the numbers that I put into my notes here, but generally a course is about $1,000 a hole, including the baskets and the tee pads. My suggestion would be to go to baskets first. So if I look at how Leduc put their course together, they put the baskets up first and just put markers up for the tee pads, and that allows for flexibility as the course plays on, so that we can play it with real baskets and then understand if we need to move the tee pads to accommodate the park, or even just for better course design, and also to understand water and drainage. So I would suggest putting the baskets in first and then putting some temporary tee pads as markers, and then looking at that in the following year to add those tee pads. But yeah, generally you're looking at about $1,000 per hole. And I would look to the Edmonton Disc Golf Association for support, applying for grants, and then getting some community support to try and sponsor holes to try and alleviate the burden on the city.
Thank you. That's all I have.
So interesting to know that Leduc has a course.
Yes.
Yeah. And the municipality put that in?
I don't know 100% what the split was in terms of who paid for what in the Leduc course. I just know kind of how they set up the layout, but definitely can ask those questions. But yeah, Spruce Grove, Edmonton, and Strathcona have courses.
Okay. And I know all those mayors, so I can ask them.
Great.
Any more questions? Seeing none from council, Nick, when we get to the next part of the agenda, which is business arising, I'm hoping our head of recreation is on board or on the call. I'm not sure if she is today, but we can ask Diana a few questions from a rec perspective and what they see as hurdles, or maybe they're even planning for something in the future. So stick around for that. I'm thinking you might be interested in that part of it too.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on in our list of speakers, I have from our Economic Sustainability Advisory Board, the chair, David Nybach. I saw David.
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes, I'm like looking all over the screen, but you're right.
I know. I can see
Thank you for joining us. Go
Yeah.
ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm here in my capacity as chair of Economic Sustainability Advisory Board of St. Albert. And we had a meeting, we called a special meeting last Monday, December 14th. And what we discussed was Councillor Watkins' motion for a feasibility study for an energy corp. And there was 10 members on the meeting. And we brought forward 2 motions. The first motion was that the Economic Sustainability Advisory Board supports moving forward with a feasibility study on the establishment of an energy corporation as a potential vehicle to generate revenue for the city of St. Albert to address the fiscal sustainability deficit remaining after expense side management is addressed. I know that's a mouthful. And the second motion was that the Economic Sustainability Advisory Board chair, which is me, write a letter to the CAOCC to council, which we, in regards to this support, which we also did, and it passed unanimously. So today I'm here to present this letter, which has been sent to the CAO as well as council, for our support as the board, unanimous support for the feasibility study to go ahead. I believe Councillor Watkins' motion set by June 30th of 2021.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Council, any questions? Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. What was your position about the previous MUC when it came forward?
We were actually in support as well. A big part of our support in regards to feasibility studies, especially, is that, you know, we're always in support of finding additional revenue streams to help the city manage its budgets. With that, you know, we're generally in favor of feasibility studies. We can't speak whether we're in favor of the actual project, but we were in favor of that as well.
Good, thank you.
Any more questions? All right. Thanks for taking the time out of your day, David.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll see you soon.
Yes.
All right. Next on my list, I have Jen Cote on face coverings. Jen, are you with us? There she
I
is.
am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
I just want to start by saying I think a disc golf course would be amazing to have in St. Albert. It's a great idea. So after reviewing, first of all, thank you for letting me speak again. After reviewing the proposed bylaw 44/2020, a bylaw to amend the face covering bylaw, I have a few questions and concerns about the changes proposed therein. This council, by their own admission, lacks direct access to health experts in guiding policy decisions. This is not a criticism, rather it is a fact. Under most circumstances, this is a non-issue, as it's not normative for municipalities to create policy that pertains to public health. That being said, I am concerned by the proposal in bylaw 44/20 to reinstate the face covering bylaw once the province-wide mandate is rescinded. The CMOH is our provincial health expert. If she deems face coverings no longer necessary, why wouldn't council follow that advice? Why is council considering an amendment that completely removes a repeal or expiry date to this bylaw? If this bylaw will once again take effect once the provincial order expires, should residents of St. Albert expect to be wearing masks indefinitely? These are questions that people want answered, and it is your duty to provide those answers. Without a clearly identified end date, council must, in the very least, revise the proposed amendment to include a trigger, as many other municipalities have done. We cannot expect people to wear masks for an indefinite period of time with zero parameters. We keep hearing the same tired statements from our elected bodies. I wear a mask to protect you. Let's be candid about that. Face coverings are literally a piece of fabric. They are not elaborate, highly technical filtration devices. Therefore, they are completely unable to filter air and droplets going out any differently than they filter air and droplets coming in. Either masks are effective or they're not, period. If they are effective, someone who is without a mask should provide little to no threat to those who are wearing them. It's just a mask. This sentiment completely undermines and insults the experiences of those who are exempt. I happen to fall into that category, and I will echo Ms. Jolie's sentiment from earlier this year on this topic. People are mean. I have been yelled at, physically and aggressively approached. Sorry, I might get emotional here. Physically and aggressively approached, called names, and flat out refused service. All by the very same crowd that pretends their actions are in the best interests of others. The most devastating aspect of this is that my young child has witnessed this behavior. It has caused her hurt and confusion because we have tried very hard as parents to teach acceptance of diversity and respect for others. If this council truly values the well-being of the residents of St. Albert, as it claims to, it would recognize that self-care and protection from COVID-19 looks different for everybody. And mandating these types of restrictive and divisive policies leave St. Albert's worse for wear. I implore council to rescind this bylaw in its entirety today. Its implementation in August coincides with an alarming rise in COVID cases that cannot be ignored. Please find it within your wisdom to refrain from the hyper focus on COVID-19 and look instead at the larger implications, of the actions you take. Leave public health policy in the hands of our provincial governments and start working on healing this very broken community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions? I can see one of your kids in the background. Any questions for Jennifer? All right, so essentially, okay, I've written down the expiry date and the triggers, et cetera. We can probably have that discussion when we get to that point in the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, next on my list is Joyce S. I see Joyce has already got her camera on and ready to go. Welcome back, Joyce. I will just,
Thank you.
Okay, start whenever you're ready.
Okay, I've spoken here 3 times. This is my 3rd time. Today, I'd like to speak to you from the perspective of an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, there is absolutely no option to allow a problem to stop me. Regardless of the problem or the challenge, I've always had to find solutions in order to become successful. As such, I hope you can appreciate how bewildering it is for me to see our public officials, you all included, locking yourselves in your homes, refusing to seek out and utilize solutions that would not only prevent deaths from occurring, but would prevent the obliteration of our economy and the well-being of our society in general. If you truly appreciated how difficult it was to build a business, you would be advocating for our businesses and requiring more of yourself and of our public officials who are ignoring treatment options and enacting laws that harm every aspect of our society. Today, I require more of you. I require you to question the accepted government narrative and advocate for our struggling businesses and the individuals in our society whom you serve. Today, I require you to, number 1, review the science as it is presented by those who have been censored. There are hundreds of doctors, lawyers, and scientists around the world who say that lockdown measures are far worse than COVID could ever be. Why are you complacently ignoring their warnings? Number 2, Review the science as it pertains to treatments and remedies. Personally, myself and 4 of our family members contracted COVID. Using a high dosing vitamin protocol, my symptoms were similar to that having a mild cold. I urge you to seek out the evidence of those doctors and scientists, again, most of which have been censored and prevented from speaking out, who have had success using treatments. Dr. Pierre Corey, for example, has had this to say about ivermectin. I quote, "Mountains of data have emerged from many centers in countries from around the world showing the miraculous effectiveness of ivermectin. It basically obliterates the transmission of this virus. If you take it, you will not get sick," end quote. There are many doctors and scientists recommending hydroxychloroquine, including doctor and lawyer Simone Gold of America's Frontline Doctors. Both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine have been used safely for decades, and the censored doctors and scientists have been using it with success treating COVID. Why aren't you requiring our healthcare officials to explore those treatment options? Number 3, PCR tests. The PCR test is being used as a means to measure the seriousness of COVID, yet it has been proven to provide false positives up to 97% of the time, especially when the cycle threshold is beyond 30 to 33. Last week, Premier Kenney said that Alberta's threshold was set at 35, even up to as high as 41. Why are you allowing our government to use a faulty test to measure the seriousness of COVID? Masking, number 4, masking. I've urged you in the past to review the science that was settled prior to COVID as it pertained to mandating mask wearing amongst the general public. Prior to COVID, the WHO, the CDC, Dr. Theresa Tam, and even Dr. Fauci in the US, amongst countless others, said masking the general population was ineffective and harmful. I've also sent you information by Dr. Denis Rancourt, who reviewed the new science and proved that any studies that justified mask wearing among the general public was faulty science that was conducted without removing biases. Why do you continue to ignore the scientific data that opposes the accepted government narrative? Legally, number 5, legally, the laws that have been implemented that trample on our Charter of Freedoms and Rights have been implemented without meeting the criteria to justify those actions. Why are you ignoring the lawyers that have explained that these measures are not warranted and are illegal? Your plan is to extend this masking bylaw if and when our province removes their mandate. On what basis? At what point are you going to remove your blinders? Review the legitimate science and do the right thing. At what point are you going to refuse to sit by and do nothing and advocate for the people in our community? You're on the wrong side of this conversation, and it's time you understand that and adjust accordingly. You don't have the luxury to ignore the injustices that are occurring and do nothing while you collect your paycheck, while those you serve lose their livelihoods. It's not acceptable. You must do more.
Thank you, Joyce. Is there any questions for Joyce? Go ahead, Councillor Watkins.
First, I have a business too, and I've suffered too, like everybody else. So I've lost business also. Are you suggesting that masks are 0% effective?
I'm suggesting that the science, if you were to look at it from the CDC, from the WHO, from many of the scientists who've been censored, would say that they, as Dr. Simone Gold puts it, it's like throwing a handful of sand at a chain link fence. It does nothing.
So you are,
and all of that science was settled prior to COVID.
So you are saying that masks are 100% ineffective?
Well, I'm saying what other scientists and doctors are saying. That's one person who's quoted that.
Would you acknowledge that there are two sides to this story too, and that there are other people that say that there is an effective part of masks?
Yes, and I would also speak to Dr. Denis Rancourt, who's studied the new science that supports that, and he said it's flawed science. He has said in his paper, which he's written to the World Health Organization, he said that those scientific studies that support mask wearing were conducted without removing biases. So it's flawed science. The science before COVID was settled when it came to the general public wearing masks.
And are you a member of the medical profession, or do you have any training in medicine?
No, but I have a brain who can read and listen to what other doctors have said. I reject that argument because honestly, that's just insulting.
I'd like to think that I have a brain too, and that we were insulted too, and you told us that we didn't read anything and that we weren't listening to anything. And I'd like to tell you that I've read hundreds of articles and I've listened to a lot of people talk. I've talked to infectious disease specialists, so I've done some research. So I'm just asking you that question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any more questions, for members of council?
Pardon?
I'm just asking members of council if they have any more questions for you, Joyce. And I'm seeing none. So I'm going to go on to the next speaker, which is Mr. Mike Killick, about the feasibility of the Energy Corporation. Mr. Killick, are you with us?
I am.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
But I don't know if my camera's on it.
It's not. You can speak without it if you want, but there, I think it's coming on now. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. A little bit.
And you're in the mountains, according to your background.
It's as close as I can get outdoors.
Exactly. Okay. You have your 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to address item 11.1. Just a little bit of history here. You may recall last year that over $100,000 was spent on the Grant Thornton report for the Municipal Utilities Corporation. At the end of last year, during the MUC debates, it was clearly stated that there were many new sources of revenue that could be pursued, that the MUC business case was conservative for new business, and there were many new business opportunities that weren't listed for competitive reasons. When council voted to not proceed with the MUC, it was clearly stated that the new revenue opportunities could and would still be pursued. Unfortunately, when I read the December 2nd Q3 corporate report, it said that none of these had actually been actioned. I would have hoped that the Economic Sustainability Board letter would have supported accelerating the existing list of revenue opportunities that were listed in the MUC business case before offering support to a brand new, far more risky and complex strategy like a municipal energy corporation. Also, as an outcome of the MUC debate, council approved $100,000 for a one-year waste to energy pilot. This was also able to be done within the current city structure without the need for a separate municipal corporation. And as recently as June, council approved a detailed design for a solar farm. This was thoroughly debated by council for several hours, and there was never any mention of needing to investigate or create a separate municipal energy corporation to make it feasible. If anything, the preliminary business case was so compelling, it supported council's decision to approve $200,000 for a consultant to do the detailed design. This leads me to ask why we would need or want to even think about potentially spinning it off into a separate municipal energy corporation. I understand the Ernst & Young operation and fiscal review was funded at almost $1 million. Now this motion is proposing to add to the existing scope of a feasibility report for municipal energy corporation, and if required, add another $75,000 to the $1 million budget. I'm here to ask council to not support this motion until after we see some tangible results for the business opportunities identified in the original Municipal Utilities Corporation, until after we see some tangible results for the waste to energy pilot, until after we see some of the recommendation in the $1 million Ernst & Young report, and until after the $200,000 solar farm consultants report has been completed. I believe taxpayers of St. Albert deserve to see some results for the money and projects already committed before starting this new project. I can only imagine that based on the level of interest in the Municipal Utility Corporation and related projects, that a municipal energy corporation will warrant and garner significant public, taxpayer, and voter attention and scrutiny. Thank you, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Killick. Any questions? All right, seeing that, I'm going to go to next. I have Jane Murray on the face coverings bylaw. Jane, are you with us? Don't see her in the participants list. I will come back in a sec, see if she comes on. And then we have Mark Pascal-Lewis from the face coverings bylaw. Mark, are you with us? Okay, and I'm going to go to Jessalyn Dubrulf on the face covering. Jessalyn, are you with us? Well, this is interesting. And then Teresa.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's Jessalyn here. I'm
Okay.
just going to speak via audio if that's okay.
That is no problem. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, and this is my first time ever presenting to a council, so forgive me if I am, forgive me for anything that is, I just hope this is appropriate and okay, So I'll just begin.
Appropriate, Jessalyn, you're always welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hello, council members. Regarding the face covering bylaw, my son is on the autism spectrum. On the best of days, he struggles to read facial expressions and register verbal cues. Errands and community outings have always been stressful, as he wanders and has very little ability to keep himself safe. But errands and being in community are important aspects of life, and so I became hypervigilant. I am his safety. My wearing a mask and the whole of our community wearing masks increases the anxiety in our family and puts my son in danger. Masks take away any remnant of facial expressions, clear verbal cues, and tone of voice that help anchor him in the present moment and in his environment. Mask mandates compromise my son's safety and hinder his development. And as a family, we are left further alienated and isolated from our community. It is time for this city to stop championing face covering legislation. The body of science regarding universal masking and disease transmission is far from conclusive and definitive, but the developmental and societal harm is clear and ongoing. It is time for this city to investigate effective prophylactic and therapeutic treatments and focus on traditional wisdom for the health and safety of the individual and community as a whole. We need eye contact and smiles without underlying fear or shame. We need clear, unimpeded verbal communication. I will close with 2 quotes from the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights. Quote, "The interests and welfare of the individual should have priority over the sole interest of science or society." End quote. And furthermore, quote, "Any preventive, diagnostic, and therapeutic medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior, free, and informed consent of the person concerned based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be express and may be withdrawn by the person concerned at any time and for any reason without disadvantage or prejudice." End quote. And so I implore you, council, to act in good conscience and withdraw all face covering legislation. Challenge the province on its stance towards sweeping mask mandates and move forward in a more ethical manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jessalyn. If it's okay, if any member of council has a question, I'm actually looking, does anyone have a question? Okay, so there is no questions, Jessalyn, but that's normally the part of that we would allow that, so.
No worries, yep, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're gonna go to the next speaker, and then I'm gonna ask everyone who registered to speak to log off of this meeting and continue watching our meeting on YouTube. The final speaker I have is Teresa.
Mayor,
Register.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mark is on the screen, on my screen, but blacked out, so he may not have heard you when you called his name
Yeah,
earlier.
I'll come back to the 2 that that weren't there. Yeah. Teresa, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm going to also just speak with audio, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I am asking of you today to let your mask bylaw end. So when the provincial order lifts, there are no more mask mandates. I, as a public citizen, have witnessed an absolute upside down society with your mask mandate. This mask mandate is corroding our social cohesiveness. It is dividing us as a people with hatred and judgment. Your decision to mandate the mask is part of a one-sided narrative. I ask you, where is the other side? I will tell you, the other side is being attacked, and you as City Council are responsible for this. Your mandate is the result of one side of this narrative. I've personally experienced division of anger and hatred within my own family and especially community. You've put your community in a state of fear, evoking and perpetuating this fear with judgment, anger, aggression, and even violence to anyone who does not follow your narrative. You as a City Council hold the power to change this. And now the incentives to snitch on your neighbor for not abiding the rules, what have we become? This is exemplary of a communist dictatorship for a virus that has a 99.74% survival rate. You, St. Albert City Council, you have the power to choose differently, to not take us down a path that there may be no coming back from. Please use your power for better, for good, for all of us, not just one side. I want to leave you with a personal experience I had in St. Albert that demonstrates this division that I am asking you to see, that you've created and are part of and implemented with this mask mandate from a one-sided narrative. I observed a young 20-ish-year-old employee at a big box store in St. Albert saying to another employee that he was going to go to an anti-mask rally and, in his words, beat the shit out of them. I was so disgusted and heartbroken hearing a young man of this age speak such angry and aggressive and hate-filled words towards a person who simply does not or cannot wear a mask. But then I saw a dad who also overheard this young man's hateful words, who stopped and said, "You know what, young man? Not everyone you see wearing a mask is a pro-masker. And you should be careful when speaking violence, as the anti-maskers have way more support by the silent majority than you think." So I'm asking you to do the right thing today. Listen, support, and promote both narratives, and give us the choice to mask or not mask. We all know they are doing nothing to protect us. There is significant scientific evidence, as well as common sense, that shows that these masks were not designed to protect you or protect others from COVID-19. Please let the bylaw mask rescind.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there any questions? Seeing no questions from members of council, I'm going to go back to the two that might have been missed. Jane Murray, are you with us? Or Mark Pascalouis?
Hi there.
Hey, Mark.
Hi there. Happy holidays to everybody. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to echo the statements of Teresa and Jen and Joyce and the other few that are against masks. I too agree that it's undoing the social fabric in St. Albert. I've also witnessed several conflicts in several public locations where people seem to want to police other people. And, you know, I agree, and I'm very concerned with the fact that it's doing more damage than good. I also believe that wearing a mask is supported by scientific evidence that shows that they are dangerous, that they do increase CO2 levels and reduce oxygen levels to our vital organs, and that it's doing more damage than good. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, any questions for Mark? All right, thanks for joining us, Mark, and all of you. That's the end of our registered speaker list. I'm just gonna. So those of you who aren't city councilor staff, will get you to log off of the Zoom meeting and follow the meeting on the YouTube channel. And I'm going to move on in the agenda to business arising. We had 3 different topics in the speakers. 2 of them are on the agenda, so we'll wait to those agenda items before we question staff, but there was also the disc golf. Is there any questions? I don't know if, I do see Danielle here, but I don't know if Diane's here. Any questions on the disc golf for a member of council? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that what Nick was talking about for me is a really good idea, but I'd be interested to know from administration what the barriers might be. And I know you've been working with him, Danielle, and you and your team. So, you know, kudos to you to keep him in the loop. But what would the barriers be, and would we be able to overcome them?
So Amanda Wild, who's our Senior Parks Planning Specialist, is here to speak to the disc golf race.
Thank you, Danielle. To your question, Councillor Hanson, as you know, we've been working with Mr. Legault as he's tried out this temporary course at Langholm. In terms of barriers, one of our, I wouldn't say biggest barriers, but certainly a barrier is disc golf is not a current level of service that we offer in the city. So it's not in our service inventory. It's not built into the way that we operate. So we would have to address that both with council through the level of service, inventory work, as well as with our public works department in operationalizing a course like that and what the operational requirements would be. In terms of a course itself, we do need a fairly large site. 4 acres for a beginner level 9-hole course is required. Langholm is large enough from that perspective, but it does have 3 other uses on the site. We see over 100 hours of programming booked there, which obviously in 2020 didn't happen. So we don't know what the conflict with spectators. The course is laid out around the fields, but there are no encroachment zones that they do kind of leak into a little bit. And we haven't seen what it looks like in those transition periods where teams are coming on and off the field. So in terms of that site itself, there are some challenges that we just didn't see in 2020 because of the lack of programming. And then in terms of just other barriers, it's that whole just priority. There are a lot of things to do, and we do agree as administration this is a great idea, but just finding the capacity to do the assessments, to do the necessary public engagement to make sure that we're not impacting neighboring landowners in the neighborhood, that we've got the right site at the right time, and then obviously having either the funding in place with the partnership or through our own capital program. So there's a number of factors that are kind of influencing our ability to tackle this right now.
So a follow-up to that, Amanda, and thank you for your information. And obviously 2020 was a crazy year and we weren't seeing the same level of team play. But are there other parks, number one, are there other parks that could accommodate 9 holes? And number 2, is administration open to working with, say, the Disc Golf Association of Edmonton or taking in fundraising money for capital costs? I'm calling baskets capital costs. I don't know if that's really a capital cost, but like, are you open or do you have policy that says you can't do that? Is that a barrier?
Yeah, so thank you for that. We have put a suggestion forward with River Lot 56. We know that in other municipalities that have these types of courses, they're on larger sites with lots of trees and terrain, makes for a good course. For example, Strathcona's is at Strathcona Wilderness Center. So looking for the right site is tricky, and we don't have key kind of criteria built yet to assess those sites. So that was part of what Mr. Legault was talking about in terms of assessment that we need to do, is establish some key criteria. How big, does there need to be a certain amount of tree cover? What's the existing uses on each of the sites? So we'd need to do that assessment on a broader scale than just looking at Langholm. And then the recommendation to go talk to the River Lot 56 Society and see if that was a viable site. So there's that. And then in terms of policy, as I mentioned, we don't have disc golf as a level of service. So not a huge barrier, but it would something that we'd have to bring back to council to get your support on, to offer that as a service within our parks.
Okay, so it's sort of up to us to maybe initiate something and see where it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hanson, if you wanted maybe even a notice of motion in the new year. I don't know, Amanda, how long, like if we could do the public consultation over the winter and get something even temporarily constructed for summer of 21. I'm not sure if that's possible, but so would you want a motion from council to kick things off, or are you waiting without that?
It would be helpful to know that we have council support. As you know, 2021 is a very intense year, both with COVID uncertainty and the capital program that's potentially being approved today. So having a bit of a mandate to go forward on that from council would help us prioritize it over other work for sure.
That would be a path for you, Councillor Hanson. Go ahead. And then I think I saw raised. Okay.
Yeah, and I had one final question. What would you suppose engagement would cost?
With our new Bang the Table or Cultivate the Conversation, we could do it at a very low capital or a dollar layout. It does take a fair bit of staff time to do appropriate engagement, have the right timelines. It takes a lot of staff resources to do it, but basically our only outlay would be like mail out costs for the 100-meter radius.
Okay, thanks a million.
All right, go ahead, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, I just had some questions. I'm a little bit confused. They already operate this course here now, and they've had what 160 rounds this year. Is that what they said? Something like that?
Yeah, so what Mr. Legault had done is kind of on his own initiative set up a temporary course that has no physical infrastructure aside some buckets hanging from trees. When that was brought to our attention, we reviewed it with our Public Works Department. And because there are no bookings on that site this year, we felt like it was something that could be left and supported. So they had about 450 rounds, I believe, from Mr. Legault's report used on that site this year. And that's through an app that shares the course and people can record. But we haven't heard any feedback from the public in terms of use.
So what's to stop them from just doing another 450 rounds next year with the buckets tapped on the trees?
Yeah, it's certainly not, it's just something that we haven't assessed when the bookings do come back on. So for that 6 to 8 week period when we have baseball and soccer occurring on that park site is where we are concerned there might be some conflict. As well, we haven't really looked at where the buckets are located and if discs are hitting people's backyards or if anybody's really concerned. We haven't just had that conversation with the neighborhood ourselves.
So so he's got his buckets there, and booking comes back online next year, and we start booking those fields, and they're just playing frisbee golf still, and there's a conflict. The frisbee goes flying onto the ball diamond. Is that when we would go out and say you have to stop frisbee golf now because there's a conflict?
Yeah. So when we assessed it and did talk to Mr. Legault, that was the concern, is if the public's, because it's not an established use of the site, if the public were concerned if it was causing conflicts, obviously we'd have to remove the disc golf because the baseball is a bookable kind of approved use, whereas this is an informal use that we've just kind of let go because it is a good use of the space, but it could cause conflict when it's higher use.
Okay, and what you're saying is that right now, because there's such low use due to COVID and there's no ball diamonds and that, there's no conflict. However, next year, there could be a bunch of conflict. So he may have to stop it next year if conflict exists.
Yes, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
All right, any more questions about disc golf? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on in the agenda. Consent agenda is number 5. Councillor Hughes has asked that 7.3, the regional transit services, be pulled, but other than that, there's no other pulls. So can I have go ahead, Councillor Jolly.
That the recommendations in the following agenda report be approved. 6.1, regular council meeting minutes of December 7, 2020, and committee of the whole meeting minutes of November 3, 5, 24, and December 1, 2020. 7.4, 2021 municipal and utility budgets. 7.5, Rapid Housing Initiative. 7.6, 2021 Alberta Community Partnership. 7.7, 2021 election, appointment of returning officer and substitute returning officer. 7.8, financial forecast update, November, December, provincial COVID-19 orders. 7.9, Alberta Environment and Parks Flood Mitigation Risk Assessment. 8.3, Bylaw 2020 Municipal Development Plan, first reading. And 10.1, Civic and External Agency Councillors Updates.
Thank you for that. I will now call for the vote. All those in favor? And so I have to scroll, see if everybody's, and that's unanimous. Excellent. Next on our agenda is the minutes, which we just adopted on consent. Okay, we're on to 7.1, and I'm going to need a motion to go into camera. So I'm just bring it up here. Yes. So can I have a volunteer to make a motion to go in camera? Thank you, Councillor Broadhead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council go in camera to consider outstanding 2020 requests for property tax relief pursuant to Section 17 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, required to maintain confidentiality of personal information.
Thank you for that, Councillor Broadhead. We'll call for the vote, and then as soon as we have that done, you'll get an invitation to go to a breakout room. So calling for the vote. And that looks like it's unanimous. Thank you for that. Now I will see you over in breakout room number 2.